All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. If you haven't attended one of our webinars yet to meet me, my name is Katie Gascoigne. I'm one of the outreach coordinators for the Human Services Center in Turtle Creek. And we're hosting this webinar as part of our financial literacy program. You may have heard on your way in that we are recording the event tonight. So if you don't want to appear on camera or have your voice be heard, just make sure you keep your camera off and yourself muted as we go along. Those little housekeeping items to get us started. There is a chat feature that you can use to ask questions at any point throughout the event, and Amy will read those and answer them. She may save some of them towards the end if that makes more sense for her. If you don't want your name associated with anything, you can always chat them privately to me and I can always read them on your behalf. If you want to do that, that's also an option. Later this week, we will send out the recording of the event, copies of the slides, and then there will also be a survey to let us know how we did this evening. If you answer that survey and provide your contact information, you can be entered to win a $50 Visa gift card as a thank you. So keep that in mind. Let us know how we did tonight. So at this point, I will turn it over to Amy. So we are joined tonight by Amy Soddy from FAFSA, which is Pennsylvania's Higher Education Assistance Agency. And Amy will talk to us about how you pay for college and post-secondary education. So Amy, you can take it away.
All right, perfect, cool. With my work VPN, it gives issues, so I logged off. So hopefully it works. If you can't hear me throughout, just throw something in the chat so I know you can't hear me anymore. But to begin talking about financial aid, I always like to first start off with just defining what it is that we mean by financial aid, because there's a lot you can start to think about. How much can you afford to pay? What would that look like when it comes time to paying for college? And what are things that you can do now to start saving so that you have enough money set aside for some of the expenses that you might have to pay? Now, when it comes to financial aid, there are three main types of aid. So we have our free money, that's our grants and our scholarships. That's money that doesn't have to be paid back. So if you ever see grants or if you ever see a scholarship, you know that that's free money. Now there's also self-help type of financial aid. So our work study programs where a student would work to earn funds that they can then use for whatever they want. They could use it for tuition and fees. They could use it to go buy pizza. And we'll talk about work study programs later on in the presentation. Also do want to mention too, self-help type of aid can also include money that maybe you have put aside in a savings account or in a college 529 plan, specifically to be used for higher education costs. And then lastly, borrowed money. Anytime you see the word loan, you have to know that that's money that's being borrowed. It does count as a type of financial aid because it is usually coming from the federal government, maybe from the school or college, or maybe from a private source, but with the sole purpose of you using it towards higher education costs. So it does count as a type of financial aid, even though you do have to pay those monies back in the future. And now, the financial aid comes from many different funding sources. And I always like to talk about the sources because I think it's important for you to know where the money is coming from so you know who you can direct your questions to should you have any questions or concerns. So the federal government, they provide different types of financial aid. They offer federal Pell Grants to eligible students. They offer federal work study opportunities to eligible students. They offer federal student loans, which we'll talk about. The state government, so I work at FAFSA, again, we're the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency, and we do provide state grants and some other state programs to our eligible students. The school or the college, so depending on the school or college you are applying to or you are hoping to attend, they might be able to offer you financial aid. They might be able to offer scholarships, grants, although it's more rare, they might even have their own loans that they can offer you as well. And then lastly, scholarships, these can come from so many different funding sources, businesses, clubs, organizations, your high school, your employer, and more offer scholarships to students. So tonight, my main goal is to go over these 5 steps to financial aid. And these are really the 5 main steps in order to make sure you're receiving your financial aid and you understand the financial aid that you're receiving. I do want to first mention that before I started at FAFSA, I did previously work in a financial aid office. So I know that it can be confusing and that this process can be stressful and frustrating at times. And so my goal is really to help all of you to make it as easy as I can to understand. That being said, I tend to talk really quickly. I'm sure you can tell already. And maybe I say something that you don't really understand. Feel free to use the chat feature. You can throw questions into the chat as we go. I want to make sure that you leave here tonight with your questions answered, but I will be sharing my contact information at the end as well. So you can call me, you can email me with any questions or concerns that you have. If I don't know the answer, I can always put you in contact with someone who will, but I want to make sure, I'm definitely a resource for all of you through this whole financial aid process, beginning with step 1, which is look for free money first. I cannot stress enough the importance of looking for scholarships. And don't just rely on scholarships from your particular college or university that you might apply for. Look beyond the college or university as well. Look everywhere when it comes to searching for scholarships. If you're part of clubs or if you're part of organizations, if you are employed, check with your employer, check with anyone that you can to see if they're offering scholarship opportunities and start searching early. So if you are parents or if you are students and you're in high school, now is the time to be searching for scholarships. Even if you're in 9th or 10th grade, you can start looking for scholarships. It may be too early yet to apply, but you can at least start to keep track of the scholarships that you find and that you'd be interested in applying for later. So when I was a student, I created an Excel sheet and I kept track of the important details, the name, the requirements, the application link, the deadline, the amount of the scholarship, and more, because usually that information stayed the same every year. So I could find those scholarships in 10th grade and I would know what I needed to do or what I needed to be involved in or get done before senior year when it was time to apply. And just note, there are some scholarships out there that you can apply for even during your junior year of high school. So be sure you're on the lookout for all scholarship opportunities. That being said, when you finish high school, you are not done searching for scholarships. There will be even more opportunities once you are at a college, once you're earning a college GPA and you have college credits. So be sure to search for scholarships every single year. Going into college, I had only earned one scholarship, and it was a scholarship for maybe, I think, $500. So it was kind of frustrating. I had applied to a lot of scholarships and only heard back from one, and I was pretty disappointed. But I continued to search for scholarships every year, and within the next, 3 or 4 years that I was at college, I earned over 12 different scholarships. So just by searching and just by applying, and I'll tell you, a lot of the scholarships I received were really small. I received a $75 scholarship, a $100 scholarship, and those ones you can often overlook, right? You think, $100, is it really worth my time applying? A 15-minute application. Guess what? Where else can you make $100 in 15 minutes worth of time? And typically, scholarships, the smaller scholarships, have less applicants. Right, so you'd have a better chance of receiving scholarships that are smaller amounts for, say, $100 or $1,000 compared to a larger scholarship for $5,000 or $10,000, right? Because there are more applicants for those larger scholarships. Okay, I saw a question that came in about scholarship. So I think I'm understanding correctly. So if your mom works for somewhere that offers a scholarship for their kids, could you apply? And maybe I'm misunderstanding, so feel free to put in the chat. But I mean, a lot of employers will offer scholarships or have scholarship opportunities for dependents of their employers, right? So they might offer a scholarship for a dependent or a child of one of their employees. So you should definitely be looking for those opportunities. And students, if you're employed somewhere, you should be checking with your employer. When I worked in financial aid, I saw students receive scholarships from places like Chipotle, McDonald's, Target, Chick-fil-A, and more. So there are plenty of employers out there that are offering scholarships. Okay, so I see your question. I mean, it really is going to depend on the employer, and what requirements they have based on whose information that they need. But I mean, most of them don't have, when you look through the requirements, they might have requirements based on the school you're attending, based on the program that you're going for. Maybe you have to be working on a bachelor's degree, or you have to be working on an associate's degree. When it comes to scholarships, the student, the one who is applying for financial aid, applying to attend college, that's the one who needs to be doing the scholarship applications. I have parents a lot of times ask, hey, can I apply for my students? Or are there scholarships out there for parents of kids going to college? I mean, not really, not that I've seen really out there. It's the student, the one who's applying for college or attending college, that would want to make sure that they're submitting the applications. And that's who's going to be receiving the money in most cases. It's either going to go directly to the school or to the student themselves. Now, there are different types of scholarships, and we've already talked about this a little bit, but you might receive scholarship from the college or university you are applying for. You want to check with them and see, what's your scholarship application process? Do you award scholarships? What are the requirements? Do I have to submit an application? What's the deadlines, right? Keep track of all of that information, because you don't want to miss out on any of the free money because you submitted your application late, or because you weren't aware that there's a separate application to apply for some of their scholarships. Local and regional scholarships, again, look everywhere for scholarship opportunities. For those that are in Allegheny County and some of the surrounding counties, we are very fortunate that we have pittsburghfoundation.org. So pittsburghfoundation.org. They are a great resource for local and regional scholarships. So I definitely encourage you to be looking through all of their scholarships as well for opportunities. And then for national scholarships, there are 4 sites that are on the screen right now. You can take a look. These are just 4 of the many scholarship search sites that are out there. These are national, so you will be competing against folks and students, all across the country. But it's really important, to look for national scholarships as well. I saw a question in here about different scholarships, scholarships for people with special needs or a disability. Any type of special scholarship that is out there, the best thing you can do is go to these sites. A lot of them will have a search bar at the top, and you can put in what you're looking for scholarships about. So if you're looking for scholarships for someone who is participates in, say, the Boy Scouts, you could type that in a search bar, and then that will populate results based on the thing that you're searching. So any type of question like that, I would always encourage you to just use those search bars that are available, and then put in different things. Maybe you're going to be a math major, put in math major, put in, maybe you are a first generation student, so you're the first person in your family to go to college, put in first generation. And that's going to help to spur results, because honestly, with scholarships, most of the time, the hardest part is just filtering through and reading through and seeing which ones apply to me, which ones don't. And using that search bar can help you narrow those results down even more. And what you can do to increase your chances, start organizing your information. Keep track of everything you've been involved in, anything that you've done. Keep track of those extracurricular activities, any volunteer experience, any awards or recognitions that you've received. Have a list of that information already all typed out with the details, with the time frame, what you did, when you did it, and more, right? Anything you can do to keep track of that information. The reason I encourage you to put it on a document, like an electronic document, is because when it comes time to apply for scholarships, Many of the applications will be online. And if you already have it on a Word document, for example, you can just copy and paste that information right onto the application and save yourself all that time. I even go as far as to tell my students that if you don't have a resume yet, now is the time to create one. So for my 10th graders or juniors or seniors, go ahead, get started on a resume. If you don't think you have enough to fill up a resume, I would encourage you to maybe work with your counselor or work with your parent and get that information, because I bet you do have a good amount of information to add. And if you don't, maybe you can, encourage yourself or set some goals for yourself to get involved more, either outside of school or in school as well. But having that resume can really make you stand out when you're submitting scholarship applications and when you're applying for work study, which again, we'll talk about later on in the presentation. Now, whenever it comes to free money, there are always going to be deadlines attached. Okay, so the biggest thing that I recommend is making sure you are aware of the deadline, but also that you get the information submitted in advance. I can't tell you how many times schools have had deadlines for when you need to submit the FAFSA, and families have waited until the day before the deadline, or maybe a day before the deadline, right? And they're submitting the FAFSA application, they run into some issues, or the website stops working and there's some glitches, and now they're panicked, they're freaking out because they're worried that they're not going to get it submitted in time. Technical issues, technical glitches, these can happen to anyone, right? So when it comes to submitting scholarship applications or even applications to the college, submitting FAFSA applications and more, I always encourage students, give yourself a week buffer. So tell yourself, hey, the deadline's not really this date, it's a week ahead of that, and get the application submitted, because you never know what's going to happen. I had a parent just the other week. They were going to submit a scholarship application. Their Wi-Fi was down at their house. They couldn't access it. It was saved on a specific computer with the information. And then they had to try to find somewhere to go to submit the application that was open and that had internet. And they were just panicked, right? You don't want to put yourself in that situation. So know your deadlines, get that information submitted in advance. One deadline I do want to make you aware of, this is a yearly deadline. It's for the Pennsylvania State Grant Program. In order to be considered for the Pennsylvania State Grant, you do have to submit your FAFSA every year by May 1st. So that is coming up very quickly. So that's May 1st. That's in less than 2 weeks away. It's like a week and a half away. So if you are a senior in high school or a parent of a senior in high school, if you have not yet submitted the FAFSA application, you want to get that submitted as quickly as possible. Okay, so what is the FAFSA application? The FAFSA is your free application for federal student aid. So it's really your primary form when it comes to applying for financial aid. The reason is because by submitting the FAFSA application, you are applying for federal financial aid. So you're applying for the federal Pell Grant, you're applying for federal work study, federal student loans. We at FAFSA, we use your FAFSA information to determine eligibility for our Pennsylvania State Grant Program and some of our other state programs as well. And your school or college might also use the FAFSA information to determine eligibility for some of their institutional aid programs. So this one form applies you for all of those different types of financial aid. So it is crucial that you get it submitted. Now you do have to file the FAFSA every year. So every year that you're interested in attending college, you would submit the FAFSA form. It does open up as early as October 1st of your student's senior year in high school. So for juniors right now, this coming October 1 this year, the FAFSA will open up for next fall. So that would be fall of 2023 that it would be available for. So usually families, I do recommend to submit the FAFSA every fall, usually in November or when your student is home for winter break for my returning college students, just so that it's done and you don't have to worry about that May 1st deadline. So that's usually when I recommend. Even seniors in high school, I recommend getting it submitted November or maybe into December. Now, in order to submit the FAFSA, you do have to create FSA ID accounts. So every student will need to create an FSA ID account. And in addition to the student, one parent will also need to go on and create an FSA ID account. So the student will create their account and a parent will create their account. Both the student and parent need an account and 2 separate accounts in order to sign the FAFSA application at the end. So even though it's the student's FAFSA application, the student is applying for aid, the student is filling out the application does ask for parent information, and it does ask for a parent to sign off on the end. So I know that that can be sometimes confusing. You're like, wait, why do I, the parent, need an account? The account is only to sign your student's FAFSA at the end. Okay, so the student would do the application, and I encourage families to sit together and do it together. So you create the username, you create the passwords, and then that's when you can log into the FAFSA as the student. And at the end of the FAFSA, it will need that parent signature. So yes, you would create 2 separate usernames, 2 separate passwords, write down this information because you will need it every year when you submit the FAFSA. I see a question about asking, do you need the FSA ID accounts even if the student is an adult? It depends, and we will get to that in just a few slides. So we will come back to that about what makes a student dependent, meaning they need parent information, and what makes a student independent, meaning they don't need parent information, they don't need the parent signature. So we will talk about that in a bit. But most students do need that parent information. So just, you can go to that link, follow the instructions to create both of those accounts. And then what information is needed? So for my juniors who would be doing the FAFSA this fall, you're going to be using 2021 tax information. So that would be tax information that you are filing or that you just filed, right? The deadline was the 18th. So that would be tax information that you just submitted right now for 2021 is what's going to be used on the FAFSA. So if you look at the chart, you can kind of see the FAFSA actually uses prior tax year information. So it goes back 2 years. And so it's just important to know, and you can, take a screenshot of this, or we're going to send out the slides so you'll have this as well if you have any questions or concerns. But you want to make sure you're using the correct tax year's information when you're submitting the FAFSA. And it'll tell you on every screen, what year you should be looking at. But I always encourage families to have the information that you need for the FAFSA readily available and right in front of you when it comes time to sit down to do the application. So what information is that? Definitely need social security numbers. Don't ever guess, right? If you're like, I think I know what my social is. No, make sure you're entering the correct social security number. Double check it, triple check it, because submitting it with the wrong one can be a whole pain, and you don't want to have to worry about that. Also, what you'll need is you will need your federal tax returns and W-2 forms if you have those from your employer. Again, it's based on the tax year that's required for each FAFSA. Untaxed income as well, you will need if you received any during that tax year. And then the last thing you need is you need records in the total amounts that you have in assets. Now, when it talks about assets, and it will break this down for you, but it will first ask for the total that you have in cash and then in any checking or savings account. So you don't need to provide a breakdown, but you do need to report the total. So this would be the total that you have in cash, checking, and savings accounts all added up together. When you report assets, it's as of the day you file the FAFSA. So if you sat down, right, it opens up on October 1st. If you sat down on October 1st, it would be how much do you have total as of that day. The second asset questions are how much do you have in investments? So there is little question marks after each question on the FAFSA, and if you click on them, they will bring up a window with more information about what is and isn't included. But very briefly for assets, or for the investment question, Investments would be anything like stocks, bonds, let me think, 529 accounts, college savings accounts do get included as an investment. They would be any real estate that you have that you don't live in. So if you have like a second property or if you have rental properties, that would be included as an investment. Retirement assets are not included as an investment. So you don't have to report any retirement 401ks, 401bs, IRAs, those would not be included. I see a question in there about the PHEAA able accounts. Are those included? Let me look. I do not believe that they are, but at the end of the presentation, I will double check that because I don't believe that they are included as an asset on the FAFSA, but I want to make sure that I get you the correct info. So at the end of the presentation, I'll pull something up and we can look through it to see if it is or isn't included. Okay. Now this slide is going over the questions that the FAFSA will ask to determine if the student is an independent student, meaning they don't need parent information, or if the student is dependent, meaning they do need parent info. So who's considered an independent student where you wouldn't need parent info? So if the student is 24 years or older, you would not need to report parent information. If the student is married, if they have children or other legal dependents that they provide support for, if they are a veteran or working on a graduate level degree, if they are an emancipated minor, or someone other than their parent has legal guardianship over them as determined by the court. If the student is an orphan in foster care or ward of the court, or if they've been deemed homeless by proper authority. So the FAFSA will walk you through these questions one by one, and you will answer yes or no. Are you married? Do you have children? Are you a veteran, etc. If you answer no to all of those questions, then it will tell you you are a dependent student, and so you need to provide parent info. If you answer yes to those questions, any one of those questions, it will tell you you're independent and you can skip the parent section. But just note in some of these cases, you might have to submit proof to us at FAFSA or to the school, the college or university, just to show that it is the case. For example, if you are an emancipated minor, you might have to submit some proof to show that. Now, when it comes to parent information, sometimes it can be confusing to know, which parent's information needs to be included. So if parents are married and they live together, you would report both parents' information. If the student's biological parents live together, but they're not married, you would still report both parents' information. In the case of divorced or separated parents, you would use the parent that the student lived with the most over the past 12 months. So based on the day you file the FAFSA, over the past 12 months from that day, who did you live with the most? And that would be the parent whose information you would use on the application. If that parent is remarried, you would need to include their spouse or your step-parent's information. If your parents have legally adopted you, you would use their information on the FAFSA. Who is not reported? So if you have foster parents or legal guardians, or you live with anyone else, maybe you live with a grandparent or an aunt and uncle, etc., they do not get reported as your parents on the FAFSA. Okay, so at the end of the FAFSA, once you submit it, I do want to just point out right here where the yellow arrow is, they will show you a link to complete the Pennsylvania state grant application. This only needs to be completed the first time that you apply for financial aid. So it's just a one-time application. It's not like the FAFSA that, again, you want to do every year. And this application is really short and quick. Probably takes maybe 5 minutes to complete. There's only a few questions on there. But if you click that link at the end of your FAFSA, it will take you right to the application and you can get that submitted, right away. If you forget about the link or for some reason it doesn't work, FAFSA will send you an email and we'll say, hey, we got your FAFSA, we didn't get the state grant form. Go to our website to complete that. Okay. Now, I do want to mention that there might be one more form that you need to complete. So some colleges and universities require students to also submit a CSS profile or a college scholarship service profile. It's used by about 400 colleges and universities across the US. Now, there's only a handful in PA that do require the CSS profile, but you can go to collegeboard.org right here at that link, and you can take a look at the list of all schools that require students to submit this form. If a school requires you to submit the form in order to receive institutional financial aid, they usually have a deadline for when that needs to be submitted. So just double check and make sure you get it submitted in advance. This does not replace the FAFSA. This would be done in addition to the FAFSA. So if a school requires you to submit the CSS profile, you would need to submit the CSS profile and submit the FAFSA as well. Okay, now I briefly mentioned work study, but by applying for the FAFSA, you will be told by the school or the college you are applying for if you are eligible for work study. So the school will let you know if you're eligible. But if you are, that means you could go on and you could apply for a work study job. Usually the applications or might be an online portal are going to be directly through the school or college. So check with the financial aid office to see how to apply if you're eligible. I will tell you that these positions are usually pretty competitive. So that's why I encourage you to have the resume ready, have your resume ready, because that can make you stand out among other applicants. But once you apply, if you get selected for that position, then you can begin working once school starts, once classes begin, and you will earn a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks for the hours you work. Just like an off-campus job, you're going to get a paycheck for your hours, and then you can do what you want with that money. So students can use that towards their cost of higher education, or they could go use it for food or whatever that they need. So it's the student's money, but it's just an extra way to earn some funds through school. It is not a guarantee. Just because you're eligible, it's not a guarantee you will receive a position. So you want to make sure you apply early, and you can apply to as many places on campus that you want. Now for the Pennsylvania State Grant Program, anytime we talk about a grant program, it's good to know that those are usually need-based. So it's usually based on FAFSA information, on household size, income, assets, etc. So not everyone's going to be eligible for these grant programs. But for the Pennsylvania State Grant Program, currently our maximum state grant award amount is $5,000. We do have a reciprocal state grant program. So if you're a Pennsylvania resident, but you're planning to attend school in Delaware, DC, Massachusetts, Ohio, Vermont, or West Virginia, you may still receive a reciprocal Pennsylvania state grant. The reciprocal grant amounts are lower. So our reciprocal state grant max is $600 for the year. So that's not as much as the in-state of $5,000, but it's still better than zero. So you want to make sure you get that FAFSA submitted by that May 1st deadline every year. Okay, now we do have some other state grant programs and state programs. So I encourage you, you can look through that list. You can go to PHEAA.org to learn more. So I encourage you to look through, take a look and see if there's any you're interested in. A lot of these do have a separate application. So you want to make sure if you're interested that you do submit that additional application. I don't want to keep you all here tonight, the whole night. So I won't be able to go over each program, but there's a lot more information at PHEAA.org to learn more about those programs. Now I am going to talk a little bit about federal student loans. And I know that no one likes to talk about loans, but it's important that we do because it is a type of financial aid. So all students, regardless of your FAFSA information, regardless of your income, household size, etc., if you are a US citizen or an eligible non-citizen, you will receive a federal student loan. The student loan will be in the student's name, There's no credit check, no cosigner. There are no payments required while you're in school. And then there are flexible repayment plan options once you graduate. Currently, the interest rate is 3.73% on these loans, but it does change every year on July 1. So that's the current rate, but it will be different for next school year. Now, there are two types of federal student loans. There's a subsidized loan that is a need-based loan. The government actually pays the interest on that loan while you're in school. And then there is an unsubsidized loan that is non-need based. Anyone can qualify, and the interest does accrue on that loan while you're in school. Now, how much can you borrow? So for my first year dependent students, the maximum you can borrow is $5,500 for the year. Of that amount, no more than $3,500 may be offered as a subsidized loan. That would mean if you are eligible for the subsidized loan, you would be offered a $3,500 subsidized loan, the one that doesn't accrue interest in school, and a $2,000 unsubsidized loan, the one that does. So you'd be offered two loans that total $5,500. Your second year, the loan amount goes up to $6,500, and your third and fourth year, it goes up to $7,500. Now, how do you know what financial aid you would be eligible to receive? Well, once you submit the FAFSA application, and once you have been accepted or admitted by that school, so you will get that acceptance letter, that admissions letter. Once you have done that and you have submitted the FAFSA, the school will receive the FAFSA because you will list all of the schools you're interested on the FAFSA application. The school will receive that information and they will send you a financial aid notice. The financial aid notice will explain what type of financial aid you're eligible for and the amount of each type of aid. Usually, the financial aid notice also includes the cost of the school, and then it will show you a breakdown of the cost minus your aid, and then the amount left over, the out-of-pocket expenses that you would have to pay. So you will know, I mean, usually those financial aid notices go out in maybe December, January, or February. So, it's once you've been accepted to that school and once you've submitted your FAFSA. So it's important once you get those financial aid notices that you start to compare them and you look through to see, what aid am I eligible for? What's free money versus money that has to be paid back? If it's free money, is it a one-time grant or scholarship, or is it something that you could receive year after year? And then bottom line, you need to consider the costs and, do you have the money that you need? Have you made an affordable choice once you pick your school? One thing I want to encourage is if that out-of-pocket expense or if that cost is, let's say, $5,000 for the year, and you're like, okay, if we stretch my budget, if I borrow a little bit extra on a private loan or a Parent Plus loan, I can afford this. Just know that the balance that they tell you, that out-of-pocket cost, that is for 1 year. If your program is a 2-year associate's degree or a 4-year bachelor's degree, you have to know that really that $5,000 balance or whatever it is needs to be multiplied by the number of years of your program. So instead of $5,000, if you're going for a bachelor's degree, really the cost for that school is $20,000. And that's what you need to make sure you can afford before you choose a school. Because very quickly you get in the door, you pay that first year bill in maybe August, and then very quickly, life happens and it moves so quick and so fast. All of a sudden now it's your second year, that bill is due for the same amount, and now you don't know how you're going to pay it, right? And you don't want to get in that predicament. So when you choose a school, you carefully have to consider what is an affordable choice. And then you need to consider, if you are borrowing additional loans to help cover that balance, can you truly afford to pay those loans back once you graduate? I will tell you, for my dependent students, those that need parent information, you need a parent in order to apply for loans on top of that student loan, right? On top of that $5,500 loan. you would need a parent or a guardian or someone who would be willing to either co-sign on that loan, or a parent who would be willing to borrow a Parent Plus loan on your behalf. So it is really hard for our students to do this without parent or guardian support. So I do encourage, start looking into your options now and just get an idea of what might be the best fit for you. And again, this is why I very much encourage applying for scholarships, because it can save you from having to borrow as much money. So, what can you do now? Visit college websites. You can start to look to see what are their costs, what are their deadlines? Do they have any scholarships you can apply for, and what's that application process? You can utilize net price calculators. So if you go to collegecost.ed.gov, you can actually look to see what the cost is at different schools, and it'll have you answer some questions to give you a general idea of what the cost might be specifically for you. Now, it's very generalized, so it's a pretty big range, but it can at least give you an idea of what you should be thinking about. And also what you can do is they do have a financial aid estimator. It's out there at studentaid.gov. Now, this is solely for federal financial aid. So this would include if you're eligible, it'll tell you if you're eligible for the federal Pell Grant and give you an idea if you'd be eligible for federal work study and federal subsidized loans, the ones that don't accrue interest while you're in school. What you do is it basically has a very simplified version of the FAFSA. It'll ask you for income information, household information, and asset information. You can plug in different numbers, hit submit, and see what age you'd be eligible for. So you can actually play with that now before it's even time to submit the FAFSA application, just to get an idea if you'd be eligible for a Pell Grant or if you'd be eligible for any need-based federal aid. Talk about what's affordable. Parents, students, have those conversations with each other to see, what can we afford to pay? If we have to borrow an additional loan, who would co-sign or who would borrow that loan? And can we afford to do that? Could we afford to pay those loans back in the future? Explore scholarships, again, never too early. And then once it comes time to your senior year or the fall before you plan to attend college, that's when you would go on and create those FSA IDs and then go on and complete that FAFSA application. Now, I do want to share a couple of important resources. PHEAA.org, of course, is a great resource. Studentaid.gov, that is where you create the FSA IDs, where you complete the FAFSA. I mentioned College Cost already, but I do want to just talk quickly about educationplanner.org and My Smart Borrowing. Educationplanner.org is great if you are still undecided. Maybe you're not sure what you want your major to be or what career choice would be a good fit. Maybe you're not sure of a list of colleges. I always encourage students to apply for at least 3 to 5 colleges. Some students apply for more, that's okay too. But if you don't even have a list yet of the schools you're interested in, you can go to educationplanner.org. There are different resources out there, different links to other sites that can help you start to narrow down your search process. We'll have you do some career assessments to figure out what career is a good fit. Based on that career, what major could get you to that point, what degree program you would need to be in. And then if you go to the college resources, it will even take you to a website where you can start to figure out, based on where you want to attend school or the size of the school or the major, what colleges would be a good fit for you. Once you have a good idea of that, you can go to mysmartborrowing.org and it'll take you through 5 steps. It'll have you first go in and put in I think first it'll have you put in like your particular career choice, what you want to do in the future. And you can, again, change these around and mess around with it. Then it'll have you pick what college would be your top choice. Based on that, it'll show you roughly how much you might have to borrow and spend to go to that school. And then based on your borrowing amount or your loan amount, it will then tell you what your monthly payment would be on that loan for 10 years. So for example, if you borrowed $45,000 at 4 years at school, it would tell you your loan payment is going to be roughly $450 a year for 10 years. And it'll show you based on that career choice, and they give you a budget that you can change the numbers in. It'll show you, hey, can you really truly afford to make those loan payments? And it's a really great site to get students to start thinking about, how much they're borrowing and what they're going to make after college, and if that's a good affordable choice. It's something that I wish I would have known about, because I could have definitely made better decisions financially. But while I was in college, right, I kept thinking, I'll worry about it later. This is something that I can think about in the future. But it's something that really, these decisions that you're a student and that you are making now are going to impact you for 10 plus years. So it's really important that you're making the best choice for you. Then again, at the bottom, these are the scholarship search sites that I shared already. These are just 4 of the many. So it's a good place to start, but by all means, this doesn't cover all of the scholarships out there. So be sure to search beyond just that list. FAFSA, we're out there on social media. So if you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, we do other webinars and other programs as well. So you can always follow us for more information to learn more about financial aid. And then here is my contact information. So my phone number, my email address. So if you do have any questions or concerns after tonight, you can always reach out to me via phone, via email. We can set up an appointment and I can help try to answer any of the questions that you have. So if you have questions, throw them into the chat now, and we can, go through any questions that you have. I did see a question in there about, do you know if going to college would affect my subsidized housing? I don't believe that it would have any impact on it. When you fill out the FAFSA application, it's just asking you for some general information, and then based on that, it would tell you what financial aid you're eligible for, but it shouldn't impact your housing. The only thing I could see is, once you know how much you're going to owe the college or university, you might have to figure out getting on a payment plan or borrowing an additional loan if there's an amount that you have to pay that financial aid doesn't cover. Because again, it's very rare that we see financial aid covering the full cost to attend. So it's good to think about how you can afford to pay what's not covered by your financial aid. Okay. Keep throwing your questions in there. I do want to pull something up really quickly. I know there was a question about PHEAA and if that needs to be reported on the FAFSA. So I do want to just double check if that needs to be included really quick. But you can keep throwing your questions in as I look for that. Okay, I just found it real quick. So Pennsylvania ABLE accounts are not considered an asset for the student or their parent in determining financial aid. So you would not have to report the amount in a PA ABLE account on the FAFSA application. Okay, question about trade school, 2-year college. Yeah, so there is financial aid eligible for students who are going to trade school, who are going for a 2-year college, like an associate's degree. It just depends usually on the length of the program, what type of financial aid is eligible or offered to them. If you check with a particular school, if you check with their financial aid office, they're going to be able to give you a lot more information and even resources of where to go. Because it just depends, like I said, on usually the length of the program, on what type of aid you can be eligible for. And usually too, it might impact, if you can transfer some credits from that trade school to a 2-year college. So a lot of our business, trade, and technical schools have relationships with other community colleges, with other 2-year colleges, where they will have some type of program where if you do that trade program, there's an agreement with that other 2-year college where a certain number of credits will transfer over and count towards that 2-year degree. So a lot of them do have those agreements, and they kind of work together to make sure students get everything that they need. Usually maybe an advising office would be able to help, or the admissions office would be able to help And I think that's a good question to know, what would it look like to attend a trade school, and then what kind of credits would count towards a 2-year program or an associate's degree. So definitely ask. I know it's possible. I know that a lot of programs do work like that, but it's good just to double check because every college is different. And that's why it's so important. I usually say that during my presentation. I'm surprised I didn't say that as much as I usually do, but every college is different. The type of aid that they can offer, the amount of aid, how their classes work, what type of information or credits will transfer. It all really depends on the college. So they're usually the best source when you do have specific questions. I might be able to give you a general idea, but it's always best to go directly to that source to make sure you're getting the correct info. Okay, question about we do the bank account is under I'm a little confused, Brian, about the question that just came in. For example, Social Security benefits, supplemental security income does not get reported on the FAFSA, but if you do have a separate, oh, go ahead.
Okay, my mom's my payee, so when we reported my income on the FAFSA, they asked how much I got in disability. And when they asked for the account, okay, I included my disability account, but that account is under my mom's social. So when they run my bank account, is that gonna affect my financial aid? Because that's gonna pop up. My name's not on it though. Do you get what I'm saying? It would come up under her name.
Well, would your name be on it as the account owner, and then she's like,
so she's the account owner, and then I'm the beneficiary.
Okay, if she's the account owner, then it would be reported as a parent asset. So it wouldn't be reported as your asset as the student, but it would be reported as a parent asset.
Because I'm like, when I do my recertification for HUD, it's my asset. That's why I thought, I wasn't sure if that would mess up my.
And is it just like a regular, like general bank account, or is it a specific one?
Let pay. I wasn't sure if that would screw it up because my mom makes some good money.
Well, based on those questions that I asked, are you an independent student or a dependent student?
Independent.
Okay, so since you're an independent student, you wouldn't need any parent information on there for that particular account. If she is listed as the account owner, then you would not report it on the FAFSA, so it wouldn't impact your financial aid.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself.
Okay, sounds good. Do we have anything else? Any other questions? And again, you can always save my contact information and email me. We can always set up a time to talk and go over more information as well. I don't expect all of you to remember everything that was discussed tonight, so don't hesitate to reach out. And then, as was mentioned, you'll get an email later this week with the PowerPoint slides. So you'll be able to look back at those if you do have any, other questions or concerns. So let's see what else. No, I don't see any other questions.
There was one that was sent to me. If someone has a foster child, are there additional grants that are available to the foster child for going to college?
Great question. So with our foster children, if they were in the foster care program, when they get to that question on the FAFSA, it will ask if they've ever been in foster care. Because of that, if they've been in foster care, they will automatically be an independent student. So they won't need to provide any parent information. As an independent student, FAFSA is solely based on their income information. So usually if our foster students don't have too high of an income, we see that they do receive usually, you know, close to or the maximum Pell Grant and state grant. What I would encourage you as well, I'm going to go back to a previous slide. For the Pennsylvania state, for FAFSA, we actually do have a foster ed tuition waiver program for foster students in particular, and the PHEAA Education and Training Grant Program. It's kind of connected to the foster ed program. You do the one PHEAA application, and if you are accepted or approved for that program, then you would be able to receive the foster ed tuition waiver if you're attending school here in Pennsylvania. PHEAA, the PHEAA grant can travel. So even if you go out of state, you could receive the PHEAA grants in any of the state that you attend school. So if you go to FAFSA.org, the PHEAA grant application is out there for current students or for students looking for this fall. Usually it's released March or April every year. So make sure that you would get that submitted, you know, as quickly as possible. But those are 2 grant programs specifically for our foster students here in PA and some of our other states as well.
Great, thank you. So yes, if people have more questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. As Amy said, we'll be sending out the resources later in this week, so you'll get a copy of the slides. You'll have Amy's contact information to ask her any additional questions. There will be the recording in there. And then also the survey to let us know how we did. We appreciate honest feedback. You can let us know what was great or anything that could have been improved. And if you provide your contact information on that survey, you'll be entered to win a $50 Visa gift card. So that might be a nice little treat for you or for your family member who's heading off to college. So that's just a thank you for helping us.
Now a question about searching, grant searching. The main two grant programs are the federal Pell Grant and the Pennsylvania State Grant. So sometimes it can be harder to search for additional grant opportunities. You know, definitely search, you know, you can use a Google search or ask around too if you know of anyone else that maybe has received other grants or scholarships. Those are really the 2 main ones, but there might be other ones out there that you can find. When it comes to applying for other grants and scholarships, I do want to make sure you know you should never have to pay to apply for a grant or a scholarship. So if it's asking you to submit money or bank account information, you should not have to apply. The only exception to that is, I'm going to go back to this slide here. The College Scholarship Service profile does have a fee in order to submit the CSS profile. There are fee waivers based on family income, so you might be able to apply for a fee waiver, but this is the one exception. If your school does require you to submit the CSS profile, you would want to pay that fee, but any other scholarship that you are applying for or grant, you should not have to submit any payment information. If there's really no application, if it's only asking for your name and email and it's calling itself a scholarship, it's probably not a scholarship. Most of the time those have essay questions or application questions that you would need to fill in. If it looks sketchy, trust your gut, it probably is sketchy. And you know, you can always look more into the website, make sure that they are, you know, giving these to actual people are actually receiving this. So, you know, definitely do your research and look into it to make sure you're applying to something that is truly a grant or a scholarship.
Great. Well, we are right at 7 o'clock, which was our ending time. So I want to be respectful of people's calendars if they need to get to something else. Thank you so much, Amy, for all of this information. It was a lot, but it is also very useful information to help people prepare for their college journeys. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.